The attitude of you can either have this or you can have that in terms of services and placement in the IEP is one of the largest barriers to inclusive education that I've found in the United States. And so we have school districts that have this kind of attitude that either a student can function in a regular education classroom with very little support, often with a consultative model where two teachers have conversations about the student weekly or monthly, but they don't directly work with the student, or by and through several push-in services to the classroom. This is simply not enough for all students to be included. This is simply not enough for all students to be educated in their least restrictive environment, and for them, as well as their non-disabled peers, to realize all the benefits that inclusive education holds. And so I call it you can either have this or you can have that. You can be in gen ed and on a standard curriculum and moving at the same pace as everybody else, mastering the same skills at the same time with the consultative model or with the partial support facilitation push-in model. Or if that doesn't work for you, right? If those regular level accommodations and that level of support doesn't work for you that I just described, then you can have that. And that means separation. That's a euphemism for separation. Special education, I have found to come to mean separate education. And so that's just not right. And that's just not appropriate. We know that this is happening. We know that this is being done all throughout the country. We know that team members are telling parents, well, we don't offer that level of support in regular education. If they need that much, then they should probably be in a special needs class, or they should probably be in a separate day school. And so how do we fight and combat that? How do we stop that from happening? One of the things that I do in IEP meetings is I focus largely on the present levels of performance, on the accommodations, on all the things that the student needs, without getting in discussions throughout the IEP meeting about where that will take place. I don't really encourage those conversations to happen until we actually get to the service and placement section. And that's where we should be inspecting which of these unique needs that the student has could exist in any classroom that are not classroom specific. They could happen in a regular education classroom. They could happen in a resource room. They could happen at a separate day school. They're not specific to a removal. They could exist in any place, right? And make a list of those. And then what are the things here that could only exist, that could not be replicated in the same manner, the same way in a regular education classroom? And you would be surprised at some of the discussions that this leads to, and many of the things that we've come to believe could only be provided through separation that actually could be provided in a regular education classroom if the school district would just provide the necessary supplementary aids, services, and supports to the student to make it possible. Right? So this is how we frame our discussions in IEP meetings. And this is what leads to a higher rate of success in truly identifying what the actual LRE is, least restrictive environment is, for a particular student. We're not writing institutionalized IEPs, we're writing individualized IEPs. We're not to match a certain master schedule. We need to write IEPs to meet the unique needs of the student. And then either the school that the student is at can implement that IEP with fidelity because they have that continuum, or they need to tell the parent what neighboring school to report to that does. But we should not be boxing ourselves in to write an IEP just based upon what a certain school's offerings are. Okay, but schools need to step it up, and schools need to become more inclusive in nature and in their heart. And that comes with a lot of training. And I've found that it comes from the top down. It really does. The administrators that you have, the ESE specialists that you have, the training initiatives that are done at the school level, it's the heart and soul of the school. It's from the top down. And if you want to make a difference in that, you can start by volunteering, joining the PTA. I realize that not all parents have the time to do that, by the way, because we're working during the day. But there are other ways, even evening events. Maybe you can initiate a virtual evening PTA meeting. I know that depending on your district, there's already programs like Best Buddies. There's programs like peer-to-peer connections. Even certain districts have initiated their own kind of programming to support inclusive education. I saw something really cool in a district in Northern Florida where they bring in a veterinary clinic with animals, and twice a week, the kids are taking care of the animals, the students from the self-contained classroom, as well as the students from the regular education classroom. And in this way, they're coming together for a shared purpose where everybody has a value, where everybody has something to contribute to that shared effort to take care of those animals. And it's really, really beautiful to see and watch. And starting that program, starting small at that school, expanded their thinking about what can be done in inclusive education and in general education classrooms. And they have reduced their rate of self-contained by a huge amount. I think she told me, I don't have the percentage, but I think she told me that they only now have 5 students school-wide that are in a separate classroom, whereas they used to have 3 classrooms that were at 14, and they had staffing there. They had multiple parapros. Now those parapros are dispersed throughout the building to support inclusive education. So how do you make a difference in this, right? How do you make a difference? How do you debunk the system of you can have this or you can have that? It starts with you. It starts with not accepting that at your next meeting. It starts with passing along information, encouraging parents to fight that way of thinking, to not just allow it to continue to go on, because it goes on as long as we, as a greater advocacy community, allow those kind of conversations to go on throughout IEP meetings and allow those kinds of IEPs to be finalized. I hope today has given you a little something to think about. Please, please, please become active in this group. Post anything that you want, as long as it has to do with our shared mission.